What's the scam with Warren Mundine? He's running for politics again in Paul Fletcher's old seat of Brookfield. Is he a glutton for punishment, was or what? The only problem is, of course, for Warren, he has to be pre-selected by the Libs first, but he appears to be running an early campaign on his beloved Sky News. Now, the Libs might tap him on the shoulder and suggest that he not campaign in his red Ferrari. I could get around in a red Ferrari with my I'm Not a Wanker t-shirt on. The funny thing is that was the chief campaigner for the no vote in the Voice referendum. And the majority of people in Brookfield voted yes. But Warren deems this to be a positive because, as he told Sky, it shows, and we're quoting him here, it shows that they are committed to Aboriginal representation. There you go. No challenge cannot be surmounted for Warren. Now, just on the government's policy of childcare subsidies for billionaire babies, a good contact of ours who runs a childcare centre or two touched base the other day. It beggars belief, he said. Labor is proposing to give non-working rich people 3 days of subsidised childcare, especially, said our person, after announcing that deficit. He's referring to MYEFO. So let's get real here, though. How, for heaven's sake, are you meant to go to lunch at Rockpool or the Bergs, or relax over the hand-dived long-spine sea urchin sourdough brioche for $275 at St. Peter's Noshery? Do you think these places have high chairs for the kids? How embarrassing it would be to have to ask for a high chair because you had your kids with you and you couldn't put them in subsidised childcare. No Australian should have to grovel. No Australian should have to ask for a high chair or go shopping at Tiffany's with a pram. Meanwhile, Lucky Jim Chalmers. Lucky Jim Chalmers in the high chair at Treasury this week, handing down his MYEFO, that's the mid-year economic and fiscal outlook statement. It was a tad hairy too. Deficits for years. The opposition was very happy about this, of course, because it makes the Labor government look bad, especially given that they had 9 years of deficits themselves, and Lucky Jim Chalmers has posted 2 surpluses on the trot. But the coalition, despite being big fans of the worst deal in history, we're referring here to the $368 billion AUKUS spend on submarines, well, they can't really talk, can they? Especially now. Where will they be getting that lazy $331 billion for their nuclear boondoggle? Well, they'll be getting it from us. Purportedly from the public, because private investors are not interested in nuclear. So while the coalition plans to sink the hook into taxpayers for that suspiciously low-looking $331 billion, looks like a rosy number from their independent experts report, Frontier Economics, $331 billion for nuclear reactors, which might get up in 20 years' time. If everything goes well, by the time it's all over, we're 90% renewables. Meanwhile, private investors have been mopping up the renewable energy tenders with alacrity. It is happening. Now, there's a mite of good news for Jim Chalmers, though, because there are mutterings in RBA land of an interest rate cut early next year. Just before the election, that is. That would be good news for Labor. It would allow them to crow that rates are coming down, that they got in when they were more than 6% and now they're less than 3%. And they will have to crow hard because they are up against the LNP fan club, which is the media duopoly. Here was a headline this week. Unfinished business. Chalmers to press on with super tax hike. Rivets newspaper, The Israelian, was complaining this week about Labor's so-called tax hikes on super. Tax hikes? To give both government-subsidised media houses, however, plaudits. We must commend them for something that we've been yakking on about for years, because they did say that superannuation tax concessions, which are mostly skewed to wealthy retirees, or ORBs as the Australian Bureau of Statistics calls them, old Richard bastards, as they are classified. These, said the Israelian, quote, are expected to cost the federal budget more than $55 billion this financial year. as Jim Chalmers vows to push ahead and legislate Labor's tax hike on high balance nest eggs for ORBs. They're onto it, finally. We've been yakking about it for years. $55 billion tax perks. Now, that number is now larger than the budget allocates for actual aged pensioners. That is, people who need it, people who actually need it for their pensions, that aren't just going to pass it on as a tax shelter for their spoilt children. In other scams, the former Labor Minister Mike Kelly was in the Nine News, that's Nine spelled N-E-I-N, decrying people like Penny Wong for being nasty to Israel. It's an outrage, a scam. Nine forgot to mention up front that Mike had left politics to join Palantir Technologies, whose AI technology is used to target Palestinians in the Gaza death camps. Meanwhile, there was a homeless man fined for camping in his car in the ACT. It was a good news story, though, in the end, because he appealed what the story referred to as his unauthorised conviction in the courts. Well, it's lucky that he wasn't in Victoria, because under Jacinta Allen's new protest laws, this man could have been locked up for unlawful protest if he made a fuss about it and didn't go and get a protest licence from Jacinta first. A licence to protest, yes, that's where we've come. That's where we've come in the land of free speech, freedom of assembly. We now need, if you're in Victoria, a licence to protest. I mean, what sort of protester goes and gets a licence? Sort of undermines the whole purpose of protest, doesn't it? Now, it's been suggested that Scam of the Week ought to go to the latest anti-Semitism scam merchants who made the vile and scurrilous accusation that the AJA, the Australian Jewish Association, had faked a gross act of anti-Semitism. As you can see here, the AJA sallied forth with a declaration when they found these banknotes, these $50 notes, that this country is unrecognisable under the Albanese government. The AJA received a report that a Jewish man withdrew money from an ATM near a synagogue. This is what he found. Here it is. Disgraceful. Notes defaced with anti-Semitic imagery and text. Now, there have been heinous accusations made on social media by Hamas terrorist supporters that the AJA faked these notes themselves. That is simply ridiculous. It's ludicrous. Just look at the numbers. While there are only 1 billion $50 notes on issue, it is entirely plausible that, and okay, fair enough, the ATMs don't spit out damaged and defaced notes, but it is entirely plausible that some terrorist did infiltrate the ATM near the Australian Jewish Association's headquarters in Bondi and plant these very notes, which the AJA associate happened then to withdraw from the ATM. These notes separately withdrawn from the billion notes on issue from the ATMs in Bondi. Seems legit to me. Now, by the way, a majestic scam by the cuff-linked buccaneers from Brookfield. These are the guys that bought 41 private hospitals, re-domiciled them to the Cayman Islands. These are the HealthScope hospitals, including a public hospital. That's the Northern Beaches Hospital, my local. I've got frequent flyer points. They got them for nix, of course, $1.2 billion for this hospital. Then they nabbed one of Australia's biggest suite of nursing homes and retirement villages via their takeover of Aveo. And they took these assets, these Australian assets, to the Caribbean too, to Bermuda this time, not the Cayman Islands. They like to diversify their tax havens. And while they were busy paying no tax in recent years, the government gave them another leg up by closing Manly Hospital and Mona Vale hospitals on the Northern Beaches, so the 30,000 people are funnelled into the Northern Beaches Hospital, the one which was given to them for nix. And the government said it hoped at the time to turn Manly Hospital into a hospice and a well-being site for troubled youth on the Northern Beaches. But just this week, it's just happened, the boys from Bermuda have been slung the property development deal on this lavish site, the old Manly Hospital site, which overlooks Sydney Harbour and the city in the background. And what do you know? No plan for youth mental health. No public asset. No a property development for upmarket retirement homes to be executed by the boys from Bermuda. So the coalition finally is losing another veteran supporter of fossil fuels. Keithy Pitt is retiring. Keith Pitt, a coal-loving man. According to the story, Pitt told the Israelian, and we quote, "Under David Littleproud, the Nationals are becoming irrelevant to their regional-based constituency by turning their backs on coal-fired power stations." On coal-fired power, retiring MP Keith Pitt says. Yes, the Nats really do need to return to their roots. Coal-fired power. So scam of the week, again, a rich smorgasbord. Who do we offer? We so often offer this prestigious award to politicians and not those who buy them. So this week, we're going to have to hand it to the boys from Bermuda and the Caymans, because they are the undeniable champions at swooping on Australian regulated assets. Regulated assets are good because that means government, lovely government money, ripping them away to the Caribbean Sea, skiving out of tax, inveigling politicians into giving them everything they want, and then doing it again. For those who can't see the beauty of this scam, it's in the tax, because if you're a foreign multinational that doesn't pay tax, like our fossil fuel guys, you get a 30% advantage in every dollar spent because you're not paying 30 cents in the dollar in tax. What a scam. Good on you, Ferb. Thanks for your support. Please like, share and comment in the space below. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We'll be going through, so we'll pop out some content during the next few days. We call it the Bring Out Your Dead time, because that's when people like to bury their hairy announcements. We'll see whether we can get onto them for you. Have a happy holiday.